Sniger, and had a lovely time up there, just sort of strolling on the beach with the dog, albeit the weather was pretty like, now if I can get...
Oh, where have you gone? Where did you go? Where have you gone? Hang on a minute. Where have you gone? Sean, he disappeared. Sean. Oh, here we are. Hang on. You've disappeared. Hang on.
That's
hang on.
Much better. Can you see that now?
I got you. Yeah, that's much better. I've got you.
Ah, lovely.
Right, we're all right. Right, we're here, and I'm all right. And I'm recording this, Ainsley, so we can put it on my. We'll put it on our little thing a bit later.
Okay, we've got an hour. I've got a 12:45. I've got another Zoom call.
We've got. So we'll be plenty of time. Plenty of time.
Darling.
So, firstly, look, there's no big introduction apart from the fact it's lovely to see you. It's great to speak to you, and I wanted to ask you some great questions. So, what this is called is Restaurant Live. We've done we've done a number of what we call Insta Lives, which I've done with some amazing chefs, and it's been a lovely time through lockdown for me to do this, and it's been actually really interesting to speak to Jason Atherton, Matt Tebbett, Francesco Mazze, John Williams, Claire Smith. I mean, amazing group of and fantastic individuals, great professionals, but also to have a bit of time to actually ask them about things that I would never have the time to ask them about. So, you know, things like, you know, where did their love for food, or where did they get? But with you, of course, Ainsley, there's some other things I want to talk about. So, first of all, it was great to see you at the gala. You came to my gala, which was...
Thanks very much. It was lovely. Thank you for inviting me. It was really a lovely evening too. And you know what's so nice about it, Robert? It's just sort of hooking up with old friends. I think you mentioned that on stage when you were doing the whole introduction about just bringing people together, people in the industry. We share the same passion, if you know what I mean. And so lovely to see Brian and Brian Turner, Anthony Royal Thompson, James Martin, and all of us just to get together, because quite often it's only in work, as you just said, you don't have a chance to actually sit and chat with people. It's work, everything's based on work, and then we're all in a bit of a hurry. So this is an opportunity just to sort of relax into it. And that was very much reflected in the gala, or on the gala evening, when we just had a bit more time with each other. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. And now, doesn't it seem a lifetime away, doesn't it? I mean, all of us together.
Don't. Oh, it's next week, is it? A year's gone by already.
Well, it's not. It's no. Well, you know, you almost feel. I mean, it was only in the end of February, like it was the end of February we did that, and it does feel like a lifetime away. It feels like, will that ever come back? Well, I hope it does, of course. But it was a wonderful evening. You were on great form. I thank you very much for that wonderful program that you narrated about Gary Rhodes, of course, which was brilliant. I mean, it was a really sad time, obviously, from our, and I know Brian was with Gary, you know, about 3 weeks before. Before
in
that.
Dubai.
In Dubai, yeah, amazing.
Yeah. And he was filming a new series, of course, and it was reintroducing Gary back into our lives again, and you know, his talent, his style, his skill, and we don't realize at the time, you know, how prominent he was and what he actually brought to the table. You know, besides great recipe, a discipline with our cooking. You know, so often when you see chefs on TV, with me, I have a kind of natural, come on, let's just get out there. And if you want to take it to the next level, Gary allowed you to do that in a sophisticated way, in a bit of style, retaining that Britishness of your food to be proud of. And there's something really, really lovely about that. We address that even more in this day and age. We appreciate going to some restaurant and having a good old Lancashire hot pot.
But it's so sad that, as you say, he was coming back and doing his thing, you know, and his wonderful history, of course, with Brian, with the greenhouse and all of those places, which is where he was, you know, in the beginning. But and one of the other things I congratulated you on, of course, was your MBE, which I'm going to also congratulate you again on. Now, have you been able to go and get it?
Yes, I went and got it. Literally, I think it was 2.5 weeks before lockdown.
Right.
And then during lockdown, I think the second week of lockdown, we all discovered that Prince Charles had got COVID. Yes. And so it was a bit like, oh my God, but I felt fine. You know, we shook hands and we exchanged words without any, in those days, we were all very ignorant and we didn't have any mask or anything like that. We just, we didn't quite know. And I'm still not sure, Robert, whether we do know what we're dealing with. Do you know what I mean? It's it's a bit of a kind of, it's an odd one and unprecedented, as we know. And so, I don't know, but it was wonderful going to the palace.
Isn't it amazing?
Oh yeah, and I took my children, and one of the things that they said was, you walk into the room and there's chandeliers as big as a house, but there's not one of them, there's 8 of them, which I thought was just wonderful.
And you know, look, we're in a unique little world here because we can talk about this and I remember when you walk up the stairs, I've got my picture just there of Prince Charles giving me mine. When you walk up the stairs, it says recipients this way and everyone else that way. So, you know, go up there and the family go over there. And, you know, I was walking up the stairs and in front of me was Kylie Minogue on the day I got mine, which is many years ago.
Yeah.
And Kylie went this way and her family went that way. And I thought, doesn't matter who you are going in there, you know.
Exactly. Yeah,
and it is the most, I mean, I'm sure for me, it was an amazing experience, but a very emotional experience, you know, with the orchestra playing and they're playing God Save the Queen. Oh my God, it's just too much. It's too much. The most amazing.
But what I thought was beautiful, you're so right with the orchestra, because we're actually away from them. You know, if all your guests and everybody go and sit in the room, and they are being played the most wonderful classical music. We're in the back there being told how to walk backwards, you know, away from his or her majesty. And, you know, and the whole thing. And of course, by the time you arrive there, it's a build-up of kind of, I say tension in a way, because you want to get it right. And you want to get it right, not for yourself, but for your children. My 3 children were there.
Yeah, absolutely.
And of course, when I did, eventually, I'd had a bit of a giggle with Charles and chatting about stuff. And I took steps backwards. And as I turned to walk out, I caught the sight of my children. And we were all just, little tears are just beginning to form, because it's such a proud moment.
I know.
And you have no idea how you're going to behave, because it's not something you share every day, is it, Rob?
No. Look, we could go on about this for a whole hour. So probably the audience who will see this will probably not appreciate going on about personal
why not?
But why not?
Wash your socks whilst we talk.
So let me go on to, we've been in lockdown throughout. I think I saw your Caribbean adventures and your Mediterranean adventures. So I've just come back from Greece. And we were away for a month. I've been cooking in Greece. I've been doing on my Instagram channel, I've been doing a lot of cooking, and I was cooking from Greece, and I've just done spanakopita today, fun enough. It went out, although I'm sitting here, it went out today.
Spanakopita, beautiful spinach and the cheese and the layer of thin pastry. It's absolutely beautiful. And what a dish.
Did you hit Greece on your Mediterranean travels?
No, we were going to do Greece. I think Greece is one of those places that I think someone did it recently, and we found that it was just going to be, you know, it came a bit too soon afterwards. Right. You know, a lot of programs go out, and I think that the networks sort of have a look around and see what's happening. And I very much feel that when you start talking about the Mediterranean, places like Spain, Portugal and Greece instantly come to mind. It seems to be the place where Brits go, even Cyprus. And then we decided, okay, let's do Cyprus. Then we discovered that you can't go in to the north of Cyprus and then drive down to the south because, you know, it's different. You have to leave the country and come back into it. We thought,
wow.
you know, with all the crew and everything, you know, you've got 16 crew, you've got 50 pieces of equipment and stuff like that. We really made it sort of quite difficult. But it did give us an opportunity, though, Rob, to go off and experience places like Jordan, which was amazing. Going to Amman, going to Petra, which is not directly on the Mediterranean, but it's kind of round the other side. You'd hit Israel before you come round there, but it is so heavily influenced by the food of the Mediterranean and the people there, because we think of Jordan as kind of almost like Middle Eastern, and the influences there that you have from the Med, it's just astounding. And the people, the gentleness of them and the warmth, and Aqaba, which is right next to the sea before you get round the corner to the Med there. Beautiful, beautiful fish dishes, aquatic kind of waters, and as I say, lovely soft people that have just embraced that part of the Med, you know. Beautiful.
Well, I you know, through lockdown I decided that I would go back to my love for cooking, because I'm a chef by trade, although I ended up doing all these other things with galas and Michelin and
let somebody else cook it, Rob. Let somebody else cook. It's too bloody hot in that kitchen, mate. I'm fed up of scratching my thighs.
But I found, Ainsley, I found my love for food. I found my love for produce again. And because I had time, because we were here at the house, I live in Berkshire, so not too far away. And because I was in the house, and so when I went to Greece, I've suddenly got this absolute desire and urge to cook again, but to look at the Greek. So I did some really classics. I did the meatballs. I did the Spanish competitor. I did the
souvlaki,
souvlaki. You know? I did the euros. You know, I mean, it was absolutely amazing. I loved it. But you know, going on to your other one, the Caribbean one. So I love the Caribbean. I am, believe it or not, one of the things you won't know about me, I was working very closely with the Cayman Islands. My cousin lives on the Cayman Islands. My daughter lived there many years ago. I have family there. I've been there probably 30 times. I became the hospitality advisor to the government on the Cayman Islands. Now that's a
Rob.
Job.
That's a great gig. That's a great gig. Forget Greece. You can shove your Spanish competitor up here.
So, and I was working really closely. Obviously now the Cayman Islands, probably a bit like the rest of, I know Barbados, I'm not quite sure about Jamaica and others, but so the Cayman Islands obviously is absolutely shut down because majority of theirs are American, Mediterranean. So nothing's happening. We were working really closely, but I have an absolute, and because of COVID and because of what I've just done in Greece, I have an absolute passion now to go back and find out more about traditional Caribbean food. Now, so your Caribbean adventures took you to which islands did you?
Well, we started off in Jamaica, then we went to Trinidad, Tobago, Grenada, St. Lucia, Antigua, Dominica. I mean, we did quite a lot of islands I think we were away for about 7 or 8 weeks.
Wow.
All very different, all very different. You can imagine every time you go to one of those islands, they're very proud. You know, the larger islands like your Cubas and your Jamaicas will call them a small island people that come from Dominica and stuff like that. And they are small islands. In fact, Dominica, I don't even think there's a traffic light there.
I'm taking a picture of you on here, by the way, don't worry. Smile.
Yeah, there's a place like Dominica. I think, you know, there's no traffic lights, or if there is, there's probably one. And there's a lovely thing that someone said that if Christopher Columbus returned to the Caribbean, and I did cook up against one of these trees, 400 years old, that Christopher Columbus would have walked by on that particular beach. They're very proud of telling the story, but they do say that it's one of the few islands that if he'd returned to the Caribbean, he would recognize. It's so untouched.
Wow.
It's so raw in places.
Yeah,
Whereas, you know, we are terribly spoiled when we think of the Caribbean. You know, people like us, we think of lovely 4 or 5-star hotels and playing tennis and sipping, you know, rum punches and stuff like that. And then going down to the local market and seeing the girls swing their hips from side to side and balance things on their heads. Do you know what I mean? That's kind of a vision that you build up. But the reality is that is so much more. There is so much more there to offer. And it was absolutely stunning. It was so pleasing for me, actually, Rob, because when excuse me, when I go on holiday, I'm just as lazy as anybody else. I just want to kind of laze by the pool, play a bit of tennis, and you know, listen to a bit of calypso, and go out in the evening to one of the rum shops and sit down and say, "Yeah, man, give me a rum. Yeah, make it 2. Yeah, give me some of that bulla bread. All right,
give me 3.
You know, I'm not 3. You forget after 3, didn't you? And that's what I'm like on holiday. But when you're working, when you're with a camera crew, you see different things. Doors open up for you that you never imagined, you know, and suddenly you're kind of going into place. You're really discovering, you know, the foundations of their history. You sit down there with the people and say, this happened, and how, you know, there used to be this tribe here that got wiped out and everything else, and how that whole island just changed. And of course, we had the sugarcane revolution, where it was, you know, sugar was predominantly the main kind of crop that brought richness to the island and stuff. And eventually that all disappeared, and how it just kind of turned around. It was fascinating. And of course, Rob, you know, I have a history with it because I did the Who Do You Think You Are series. And when I went back there, I discovered that my my great-grandfather was Ebenezer Harriott, that was a sergeant in the 1st West Indian Battalion in Barbados. And then I'm thinking, and I always used to see these pictures of him, and he was slightly sort of light-skinned, like a mixed race person. And I always used to think, well, in those days, they didn't have photography. So sometimes they painted people slightly light-skinned, so it was more desirable to have that painting in your house. Wow. And then when I did Who Do You Think You Are, I discovered that my great-great-grandfather was a Scotsman from Dundee. Oh. That's why he was light-skinned. He was actually mixed race. You know, and he was a slave owner and everything else. Fascinating history. Yeah. And then you begin to understand the culture, and then reverse of that is how all the different foods were created. When you start talking about jerk and things like that, and how they used to marinate things because they didn't have refrigeration, so they used to use all these hot pepper and spice to preserve the meat and to cook it slowly. So, you know, that's where, you know, so much joy from food comes from. It's just a long line of history.
Do you know, Ainsley, it's listening to you, when going back to Greece at the moment, right next to me, one of the interviews I did on one of these is a lady called Diane Kochilas. And Diane Kochilas is a Greek-American chef who lives on Ikara Island. And Ikara Island is in the blue zone. The blue zone is, there are 5 blue zones. Do you know anything about the blue zone?
No, tell me.
So there are 5 blue zones in the world. One's in the Dominican Republic. One's in Costa Rica, one's in Japan, one's in California, one's in Greece, and one's somewhere else without me getting it all. But anyway, in those 5 blue zones, they've worked out, it's called the blue zone way of life, that those people live the longest. They live the longest in the world. So you pick out those. So then you ask, why do they live the longest? And ultimately, apart from stress and everything else, it comes down to diet, of course. And it comes out to what you eat. And, you know, listening to you and what I've done in my head, I have completely rekindled my love for food and my love for produce and my love for, you know, for the earth and where things come from and how it all happens. And I'm almost now cannot buy anything that isn't, you know, I don't know where the origin, I'm not talking about carrots, but, you know, but listening to you and listening to the doors open, but the way the food delivers all this history for you, because you went to cook food in the Caribbean.
Yeah.
And the knowledge that you've come back with of just everything you've just talked to me about was almost beyond. You haven't even talked about the food yet, but all the food, you know, it's about how it presents and opens up so many different opportunities, but also knowledge. Because, you know, from the Greek days of however many thousands of years ago it was, you know, we've been growing food and eating food.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's sort of the whole story now. We've come full circle. And COVID, you know, if you go on this on Instagram, number one on Instagram is cooking and food. Number one by miles, you know.
Yeah.
Next is dogs and cats, by the way, just out of interest.
Oh, well, I've got a dog, so that's not too
so
bad.
you got a dog,
lovely dog.
And my wife's.
Well, I must tell you the story. I must tell you the story of being in the Caribbean and how we do take things for granted. And I was cooking somewhere and I wanted to do this lovely sort of baked fish, and I wanted to do kind of a salsa with a bit of mango in it. So I said to the lady, excuse me, I said, where can I get a mango? She says, too late. I said, excuse me. She says, too late, mango already dropped from the tree. And I said, mangoes dropped from the tree. I said, this is the Caribbean. I should be able to get mango at, you know, at my beck and call type thing. And literally we forget that even out there, it is seasonal. We get spoilt because when I used to go down to Barbados, Antigua, Jamaica, places like that, you're staying in nice hotels, they will import it. They will import the mango. So it doesn't necessarily come from the tree that's growing in the garden. But, you know, I did eventually get hold of a couple of them, and they were a little bit green, but I didn't mind that because, you know, it's like having a green tomato chutney. I just kind of made this kind of almost under-ripened kind of salsa thing, which was quite nice. Bit too much of a bite, actually, if you know what I mean.
Bit chewy.
Bit too crunchy, yeah. Very nice, James. Lovely.
It looked nice on the plate.
Exactly. Oh, and it was beautiful. But it was like, you know, her telling me, too late, no mango drop. You know, the season was over. I was 2 weeks too late. And that's just the way it goes. And it was wonderful going to the markets too, because you do get to the market and, you know, there's just miles and miles of just wonderful food. Well, it feels like miles. It's probably just 100 yards, but all the big open space. But you forget, and you can ask them for something. Where's the dasheen? No dasheen today. You know, so it is a daily process. Sometimes you get stuff, sometimes you don't. And that's the way they cook. I think that's the way we used to cook as chefs before. You look at what you've got for that day. When you used to go to restaurants, and the specials of the day was about what you found at the market that morning, especially where fish was concerned.
Well, so you trained at Westminster Kingsway, didn't you?
Westminster Battersea originally, which is now block of flats. You know, they haven't knocked it down, but it's all flats in there. Yeah, I was with Mr. Hollingsworth at. Do you remember Hollingsworth?
I didn't. So I was the same. I'm slightly older than you, Ainsley. And I was at Ealing a year or two before you were at Westminster.
Right.
And in those days, Ealing College, there were two in the country. I'm going to be, you know, I'm sure there were others in the country, but the two in the country back in when we were there was Ealing and Westminster. They were the two sort of number one catering colleges, as they were known. And of course, Westminster is obviously Westminster Kingsway still there. We did a big competition of Young Chef, Young Waiter there last year, and I'll talk to you about that in a second. And I went to Ealing, which then became Thames Valley University, which then became the University of West London.
All right.
So my mother was very happy when I was given a wonderful honour there that I became a Master of Science, which is absolutely wonderful.
Oh, congratulations.
On the basis of that, my mother now is happy that I've been to university, well, for one day.
Yes.
And I have a degree, honorary. So she's very happy. But that sort of takes us back to I opened my first restaurant when I was 24 years old, which was in 1980. And we could only use what we had. You know, salad was, you know, lettuce, tomato, cucumber, radishes, and some watercress. I mean, there wasn't much else. You know, there was no salad arrangements that we have today. So when I was in Greece just recently, they wanted to use the figs, but they weren't quite ripe. So we had to wait a week. We were out there for 3 weeks in the first part of Greece. and the pomegranates they would have loved to use, but they were still on the tree and they weren't. So, you know, exactly that.
Yeah.
And I sort of love that now. I've gone back to, I don't want strawberries in December anymore.
Yes.
Because they're not great strawberries in December.
No.
They're not, you know.
No, that's reality. They're not. It's just, that's why I said we have been spoilt totally. And when you do wait for seasonal produce to come, don't you enjoy it so much more?
This year, more than anything, the English asparagus just sort of went, I don't know what happened. You know, English asparagus came in and I couldn't stop eating it. I was making amazing products, couldn't stop eating it.
And you couldn't stop smelling it either.
Well, yeah, in and out. I know
exactly. What's that? Oh, off to the doctors.
So I want to talk to you about, I'm going to talk to you about Young Chef, Young Waiter now, because it's really important. And then I want to talk to you about how you found the love for food. So the Young Chef, Young Waiter, when you came to the gala, you would have, you may have remembered, hopefully, but I was up there talking about this incredible competition that we run, the Nth Degree runs, and I'm the chairman of it, which is Young Chef, Young Waiter. And it's the biggest competition in the UK. Fortunately, last year, we redesigned it and we revamped the whole programming of it to a online competition right to the final. So it's been absolutely brilliant, if you like, for this year. I mean, I wish we weren't in this year, but it's been very good because it's been an online competition. And we've actually extended it to 2 different areas. We extended it to Ching He Wang. You know Ching, who is
yes, of course I do.
Is doing my Chinese and Southeast Asian element. So we've now got a wonderful another community in the UK, which is brilliant. And we've also involved a dear friend of mine, Inam Ali, who was also at the gala, who also is an MBE. And he is running South Asia bit. So I've now got the Indian and Pakistani community as well, Sri Lanka and Nepal and Bangladesh. So we've got all of them. So now we've also got Young Chef, Young Waiter Ireland. So we've managed through this time to build up 4 lovely communities. And this will be running and we'll have the finals on November the 17th, which I'd love you to come to, by the way, and do something, but I'll talk to you about that another time. But it's been an absolute passion of mine. I'm really pleased that we've managed to engage. And when I spoke to lots and lots of the chefs, like people like Jason and Claire, who have so many young staff, at that point they were furloughed, you know, to keep them engaged has been really, really, really important. And I'm really excited about the competition this year. I'm really excited about the amount of applications we've had because, and in fact, I've just written to 10 Downing Street, and I don't mind putting this out there, saying that I want the winners of last year to cook for the Prime Minister. I want them to serve. I want a great hospitality table, but I also want the government to recognize some of the some of the heroes of the NHS, invite them along as well. So let's have an amazing event. Now I know we're under different rules and what will it be like and how many people can we have, but I'm sure we can put something together. So it'd be great to do something like that. So the government, if you're watching this, please don't forget, I've sent you the letter, Prime Minister.
Yes.
But so,
Mr. Johnson, yes.
So, yes. So what I'd like you to be, I was going to go back to the start and where you found food love, and restaurants. Did you work at what restaurants did you go through as you were growing up?
Well, I think that in answer to your first question, where did the love of food come from? I think it very much stems from home life. My mother was an incredibly passionate cook. She was the one of, let me think, eight children. 3 from the first lot, then my grandfather remarried. He was a very interesting character, Robert. He went and cooked in America, and he cooked for one of the presidents. We've not discovered who yet, but he was invited to the White House on several occasions to cook. And we can't quite find out. We looked at it. I went through the whole history, pre-Roosevelt. So Roosevelt was in charge for a while. So we're talking about the 30s. I think it was... I'm going to get some papers out in a minute there, and I'll cover that again in a moment. I'll show you the list of presidents that we were looking at, because at the time Obama was very much in charge, and I was looking at the possibility of actually doing a program and saying, my grandfather came here all these years ago and I've come back to cook for President Obama, but we needed a bit more information on it. We couldn't find out, and every time we wrote off, it was kept hitting a wall, which was really unfortunate. And but he was an amazing,
wouldn't it?
Fascinating. The first man to bring, I think he brought the first Chevrolet back to Jamaica all those years ago. So that was probably before the war, probably at the late 30s, early 40s. Fascinating. I mean, the stories were just unbelievable. And
you
of course,
you should write to Mr. Trump and do your cooking now.
Oh God, no. He'll never. No, we don't even want to go there. What a character that man is.
Anyway,
Anyway, he taught his children, all of his children, how to cook beautifully. And every time I went to an aunt's house or my mother was cooking, and as you know, we've talked about this before, my dad was in show business. And so we had all these different people, Bruce Forsyth will be sitting in the house, and Bob Monkhouse and people like that. These are just names that have established themselves on the television. But the reality is that there were lots of other people, but they're all in show business. It was their business. It was their game. Once you've decided that was the business that you were in, they're all together. Some made it on TV, but you still did your theatres. You still did your Blackpool. When I did that fascinating program with Len Goodman, we went back in time, and there's all that lovely archive of my dad being at Blackpool, at the Blackpool Tower, and the Palace Room and stuff, and just performing there, and just hearing his voice, and he had it playing over the sound system and stuff. Hello, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. And all that. The style and everything. It was beautiful. And now the reason I mention this, all of these little elements, it all brings together the fact that it allowed us, because there was a little bit of money around, Robert. We all know what it was like, back in the 60s and 70s. Because there was a little bit of money around, my mother allowed us to cook. She allowed us to express ourselves. Normally It was, don't waste that. That's an egg. You do not waste that. You do not do this, bit of sugar. Everything was a bit scarce. People had just come out of the war. They were still rationing books and stuff like that. So everyone was very careful about food. But Mum allowed us. My sister ended up as a food economics teacher, and my brother, married at 21. He's got 4 or 5 grandchildren now. Cooks all the time. Married a Persian woman, so very elaborate food, sitting around on lovely carpets eating. And there was me. So I was really into my food from a very young age. Went to France, had a holiday, spent my entire summer down in Ile-de-Ré, came back full of passion and energy and excitement, went off, got a job at Very's restaurant, which was a classic French restaurant in Regent Street, £15 a week, went off to, Battersea, which was like the equivalent of Westminster Catering College, part-time day release, I think they called it. Took forever to get your 706.1 and 2, but it was, years later, what am I coming here for? And what people didn't realise, of course, is that if you worked in a really fancy establishment like I did, you probably knew more than what the college were offering you, but you still had to go through that whole process. And there were people there that were working in industrial canteens and taking stuff out the freezer and putting it on a tray and shoving it in the oven. So there's different levels, but you still had to have that basic education. So, and it just built after that, and then you meet the people in the industry, and that's when your juices really start to flow, because they bring it out an excitement in you. This is why all those people that you mentioned earlier on about how they influence their staff, how they give their staff the ability to really be, excited about their industry and, really get their juices flowing. And I was really fortunate to work with a few people like that. The late, we've just lost Kevin Kennedy. Do you remember him?
Yeah. Oh gosh, absolutely. Yeah.
Kevin Kennedy's just passed. He was my first exec chef when he was part of the Hanover group at Very's restaurant. And showed me how to bone out a turbot, which was like this big. Remember when the turbots were really enormous? You get hardly get them anymore. You get these kind of little small things, but they used to be so big. Yeah, absolutely. And a little tranche cut of turbot, and you know, how to bone out a Dover sole, and then we used to get the whole cow delivered in those days.
We did, yeah.
You know,
yeah.
Now it's health and safety. You'll be lucky if you get if you get, you know, you get ribs on your on the bit of beef.
Well, they all come in tomahawks. You just get a tomahawk and that's it, and you stick it on. Yeah,
exactly. And we used to stand there and used to see the butcher, which was we used to have a guy called Joe who was the butcher. No word of a lie, Rob. His glasses were like milk bottle top bottoms, you know, really thick kind of glasses like that. And he would be like that, screwed up, boning out the cow. It's fascinating. I mean, a real joy. Don't get them anymore, you know.
Well, there was always a butchery department, wasn't there? There was always a butchery department in the restaurants. There was obviously the desserts and the sauce. You know, I was in 2 different London locations, and they were big locations, you know, and they were the different sections, you know, that you had in those days. And so you went through your sort of training career, but your as you said, your father was in this sort of showbiz world.
Yeah, he was a pianist and entertainer. Yeah.
Right. Do you play the piano?
A bit, not too much. It was. I'll show you a little picture of him. Hold on there. So stay there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, look at that! Amazing.
Can you check that out?
That's
my dad.
It's fantastic.
That's my dad and Uncle Vic. There's Uncle Vic. That's my dad there.
Very
and they were a duo called Harriott and Evans.
Really?
There they are.
Gosh,
and they formed early doors at the BBC. They used to do, you know, the Variety Club night. Hello, and next one is Harriott and Evans. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's good to see you tonight.
And love it.
They were fantastic. Basically, he wasn't a bad cook, my dad. Actually, I have to say he was a decent cook, but one of those that spent a lot of time cooking in the kitchen, a bit like you being in Greece. Do you know what I mean? You just find yourself with lots of time, and you can sit down there and read about the history of where the oregano or something like that, and why it's so important to use.
Everything's oregano. Everything's oregano.
I know, mate.
Everything. If you don't have fresh oregano, you just put it in everything. But I
know exactly.
But that is where because you are, you know, you're a fun presenter. You've obviously got great knowledge of food now. So from the point of your training and your experiences in the restaurants, so where did it come? What was the first gig you did? The TV? I mean, Ready Steady Cook was a long time ago now, and when you would have seen the others out there. But I mean, who was the first presenter? Oh, that was Fern, wasn't it? Who was the first?
Yeah, Fern Britton. I actually went to do a pilot in, I think it was, that was probably 93, 94. I went to do a pilot for the same format as of the program that you see today, but in one kitchen was me, and in the other kitchen was Brian Turner.
Yeah, Turner, yeah.
And I was terribly nervous because Brian was, you know, he's one of the top guys, still is, you know, he's still out there doing it. But he was a top guy, and I thought to myself, I'm up against Brian. Can't believe this. And, you know, one of the chefs, I'm thinking, what am I going to do? And I remember doing this kind of aubergine and mozzarella tomato stack with a kind of a basil oil and something else, just created it out of nothing, and I won. I was so nervous. I won. I couldn't believe how, and I didn't care. I just went home and said, I just beat Brian Turner. What? I've just beat Brian Turner. And I remember him turning around and saying, who's this little bloody upstart? You know, he couldn't believe it that I'd suddenly arrived on the scene. But we had a Scottish girl who introduced us to the program, and Fern was somebody else, and then suddenly Fern Britton got the job, and there we were. We started Ready Steady Cook, thinking that it was probably going to last a year. And it ran for 16 years, nearly 2,000 shows. Phenomenal. Yeah. Absolutely phenomenal. Loved it. I went to America. I had a stint in America for a year and a half, made 120 odd shows, had my own chat show out there on NBC in the morning.
I didn't know that.
Really, really successful. One minute I was introducing some big NBA star, then next week it was Danny DeVito. Hey, coming up my show today, I'm going to be talking to Danny DeVito, and they'd come and I'd cook with them, and I had a band and everything else. Fascinating time. And then I got a call saying, we'd like you to come back and present Ready, Steady, Cook. Fern decided that she was changing, she'd had enough. And I came back thinking in 2000, oh, well, it'll last for a couple of years. 10 years later, Robert, I was still doing it. Fantastic.
It's absolutely amazing. And you present, of course, with your family being a showbiz. You have that,
exuberance, that flair. Yes, absolutely. If my dad playing the piano, or my mum would sit in the kitchen, listening to Nina Simone shaking her big backside from side to side, singing, "My baby don't care for dough." It's just lovely, wonderful memories, and just allowing us to express ourselves in the kitchen. And I've inherited all of those genes, and I kind of share people. When I do TV now, my new series, which is called The Food We Love, starts this Saturday, ITV at 11:30. And it's all about retro food. It's all about food that we loved growing up with. So, each time there's something new. It just never diminishes. No. And there are times, as we know, Robert, when it gets a bit quiet. It's the roller coaster of life, isn't it? If you've been around long enough, sometimes really busy, then it dips a little bit. And, I'm seem to be on that way up at the moment, doing a little bit of a curly bit before we hit the downward speed again.
So that was the final bit of my question. I'm conscious of timing. We've got about sort of 3 or 4 minutes left. So, and you went in beautifully to my next question. And I said this was just going to be a nice chat, and it's been a lovely chat, by the way. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you for making it lovely.
No, pleasure. And so next is, so you just went straight into that, which is amazing, being a total professional you are. On Saturday, what's the program called?
It's called The Food We Love. And what's interesting is that we were going to call it We'll Eat Again. But then Vera Lynn checked out, bless her. And so we thought it was a bit too, ITV weren't particularly happy with that. So we could, but I thought it would have been an honour to her, that great woman. So I thought it would have been a lovely title. We'll Eat Again.
That'd be fun, yeah.
I know, but anyway, they decided against it, so we've called it The Food We Love. We've turned it round in very strict COVID kind of environment. Every morning that you went in, you got inspected, but the COVID inspector was there. But it was fine, and we were able to. One minute I was sort of interviewing Giles Branrith about his, what he likes to eat. He'd be in the kitchen there, and they'd come along and cook their favourite dish. He took a box of fish fingers out of the freezer, shook them onto a tray, shoved it into the oven, and buttered 2 pieces of brown bread and butter. And I said, "What are you doing, Giles?" He said, "Well, I'm going to be making a fish finger sandwich." He said, that was it. And he said, "I cooked this for Roger Moore." He said, "Lovely chap." He said, I went to his house. He had nothing else in his fridge. So he said, "The best sandwich he's ever eaten." He said, and I said, "What makes it so special, Giles?" And he cut off the crust. He said, "Because you cut the crust off," he said, which I thought was wonderful. So I said, "Look, I said, Giles, we're supposed to try and fill 7 minutes here. Let me show you how to make some mayonnaise." So we put the egg, and I got the yolks and everything. He was making his mayonnaise, I was making mine, and put the mustard and a bit of vinegar and stuff in it. And he said, "Well, don't you get it from a jar?" I said, No, you can make it. And he was fascinated, Robert, when he saw the emulsification happening. And he started saying, oh my God, he said, it's thickening. It's getting thicker. And he's whisking like this. He couldn't believe it. And suddenly it's all coming together.
It looks like mayonnaise.
Wonderful.
It looks like mayonnaise now.
I know, exactly.
I know, yeah.
So we've got 10 one-hour shows. As I said, this Saturday it starts 11:30 ITV, and in the morning, and 10 shows, and it's all about sort of retro food your mum used to make, school days, food what you ate at school, fakeaways, lazy Sundays, all that type of stuff.
And that's been recorded and done, and do you have other plans, or in your world, do you do that? And you can't be doing things like the personal appearances because there aren't any events going on, and you can't.
Well, I am. It's quite interesting.
What are you doing? Zoom.
It's quite interesting.
Zoom
in a couple of weeks' time, I think on the 17th, I think it was sold out. I'm actually going down to do something in Devon, and people come down and they sit in their cars. So I'm being interviewed on stage. They sit in their cars and they get a signed book. So I do a book and everyone gets their signed book. So,
perfect.
I know in advance, I'll get there slightly early. So everyone gets their signed book. And then they come along and they can pose questions online or something like that. And they sit in their cars and watch. It's a bit like going to the movies and watching, I think they show their appreciation by blowing their horns, beep, 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 instead of applauding. So
let's hope they don't blow their horns before the time. So
I know. That means get off. Get off. Get off. Beep, get off.
Is it like a Q&A then, or something?
Yes, it is like a Q&A. So they'll be presenting it, and I think it's down there. Probably look it up. Something Appledore. I think it's Appledore, that area, near Barnstable, and it's this kind of book festival that they normally have every year. But
wonderful. This
is the way they do it. They get people to come in, and 120 people so far have booked with their cars. I think I don't know if that's the limit. They said, but people are very excited about it. And I just go in and I'll talk. I'll talk about the Mediterranean series, a bit like what we've been doing here today, Robert.
Have a chat.
And but I think it's probably the only time anything like that's going to happen is through this pandemic, fortunately, through COVID. And it might never happen again. So we just got to grasp every opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the most important thing is look, it's been a weird time, but you've got to look at all the opportunities. Somebody I knew was doing the drive-in cinemas, and he had however many cars in this drive-in cinema, and they had some classic cars, and you could hire a classic car and go and take it in there, and you could get in. And they had pizzas and burgers on girls on roller skates with masks. And I think, and I'm thinking, well, good, just use a little bit of creativity and imagination. And I know it's tough and not everyone can do that, but I quite like, you're going to go down there and speak to 50 cars or 150 cars or whatever
exactly.
It is, four in a car all screaming and shouting out the window.
It would be like one of those movies and the cars are rocking when they agree with you, those rocking their cars.
When it's rocking,
they're showing appreciation or they're having appreciation.
When they say, when it's rocking, don't come a knocking.
That's it. That's the one. That's the one.
All right, Ainsley, I'm conscious of time. It's been absolutely fantastic. It's lovely to see you again. I hope to be able to invite you to something in the near future, whenever that will be. I know we're doing our Young Chef. I'll let you know those days. I'd love you to come along if we're allowed to. Who knows where we are? We don't know what tomorrow brings at the moment. But what today brings, it's been fantastic speaking to you.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much. And you're looking well after your Greek sunshine holiday. You've got a radiant glow about you. Lovely. Always a pleasure, Robert. God bless.
All right. Lots of love. Bye-bye now.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye-bye.